You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the Winning Tactics podcast. For those of you that are catching us on video, you get to see some of my new graphics that I got going on today. We got the logo in the upper left-hand corner all fixed up there. Before we get started, I also like to thank my sponsor for this episode, Cowork Hub Virtual, giving consultants, coaches, freelancers, solopreneurs a sense of place in a remote world. It's really an absolutely awesome experience. It is a virtual co-working space. All the advantages you get of going to a co-working space in a physical location, you now get those in a virtual space. Absolutely awesome. Mention that you saw it on the Winning Tactics, and you can get a free customized branded background for your personal office. Check out more at coworkhubvirtual.com. And with that, I'm excited to bring my guest in this week, Sheryl Mays. We are going to dive down developing young leaders and really what leadership means in kind of a sense of small business owners, because oftentimes we see small business owners that are really good at what they do, but haven't spent a lot of time leading a team. And so I think this is an absolutely great conversation. Sheryl, first and foremost, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am excited to be on with you, Adam. This is a great opportunity to share exactly what you're talking about, leaders and emerging leaders and leaders that are already in businesses. So my name again, Sheryl Mays. I am the founder as well as the chief learning officer for Rise and Shine CF, which is a consulting firm where we focus on leadership development, business processes, and engaging employees. Spent a lot of time training individuals that were either frontline or behind the scenes that want to be in leadership for some reason or another. They just decided that's the job that they want to get. And so enjoy it, though. Totally have a passion for developing individuals to get to that next level. So it's been a great journey for me as well as for the company.
Awesome. So glad to have you on. It's always interesting. I think young leaders, at least in my experience, a lot of times they come into this and they're like, well, I'm the boss and I'm always right. And you got to listen to me and do exactly what I say. Right. And I don't know about you, but when I first became a leader, I very quickly figured out that that was not the answer. So
I'll tell you, it's interesting that you say that, because I deal a lot with values-based leadership or servant leadership. But to your point, when I became a leader, it was a total night and day, because it's different when you excel in your individual role and you get all these accolades and you get these awards and you're best in the company and your pictures are up on the billboards and they're up in all of the plaques that are throughout the company. And then you get into this position of leadership and you realize, I missed some steps. And like, this is not what I thought it was, because now you have people that you are actually responsible for. You're responsible for developing them, managing them, dealing with all the conflicts that are, going on between individuals, and, and then still answering to your leaders and all of this bottom line stuff. And so there is just so much coming at you that unless you have the fortitude to take a step back and say, okay, wait a second, what kind of leader do I truly want to be? then that takes you away from being the leader you talked about, where it's like, look, everything I say goes, and I know all the answers. I don't have to answer to you, and it just is what I say it is.
There's always those times that come up where it's got to be that. But, I always looked at it as, especially is mid-management, even mid-senior management. I'm an answer guy. I answer to my team from the top, and I answer from my team to the top. And I'm just kind of the go-between that keeps everybody happy. And that has always been my mindset with it. What are your thoughts on that in that kind of mid-level management level?
You have to get to a place where you realize the skills that got you there are the skills that you want to help others. So I remember when really, really long time ago, and I have a business mentor that I communicate with even now. And one of the things that he always said to me was, the role of a leader is to get better, to help others get better, and then to get better at helping others get better. Now that might sound like a mystery within a riddle, within a rhyme, right? But literally what it's saying is, our role is to continuously improve every day. And when your team sees that you're continuously improving and you are actually helping them to improve, then they want to perform better. They want to, achieve the department's objectives. They want to help you as a leader look good. And so, I think for young leaders, it just has to come to that. It's a mindset shift, right? It's that shifting of the mind when you literally have to look at 4 different components, right? You have to be self-aware. So you have to look at yourself and, see what is it that you are good at? What are those strengths? And then the things that you're not so good at, that's okay. But you invite those people that are good at those things. So that way you have this unified team that's working, and you don't have to do all of the work, but you're empowering people. So the first step that I always share with new leaders is that self-awareness piece. And then there is, this true self-confidence, right? In that you know what you know. You don't know everything, and that's okay, but you're open to feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You're open to feedback, rather it's taking the assessments of, a 360 or, the asking your teams how they can help you, do a performance matrix is what I call it, when you're literally asking them, how have I helped you this week? And then they rate it. And if you're below a 6 or a 5, it's like, okay, so what can I do to get better? What can I do to get a better score for you? And so it's encompassing that too. And then it's, perspective and balance. Understanding that, you have to look at all sides. I always call it using that third lens, when you have to look at things from a different angle so that you can see that there are other people with other ideas, that, their input is just as important to the objectives, and that's okay. And then, the last piece is just that genuine humility, to be approachable and open, and, to bring some fun back into the workplace. What happened to that?
I think 2020 happened to it, at least recently.
There you go. Fun out, every other stuff in, right?
It's interesting. That self-awareness piece is so interesting to me. In some of the leadership training I've done, I would walk in, I would work with young leaders, and I would talk to them, and I would ask the question. I go, all right, we're going to brainstorm how to solve problem X. And I would just come up with whatever random problem it was that was somewhat related to what we were doing at the time. And then the next question out of my mouth was, who do you think is going to come up with the best idea in this room? And it gave you a really good indication of who was self-aware about who was really strong, who maybe wasn't strong in this area, or who just had the ego that said, I know everything. And it was a really quick checkpoint, but it once you brought that to the table, you could see all the light bulbs pop on. And it was always such an interesting exercise. It took just a couple of minutes to run, but it was an interesting exercise to bring that self-awareness to the table, because I think it's so important as a leader to be self-aware in what you're doing and how you're showing up for your team.
Absolutely. When I talk about self-awareness, the piece that goes with this is, what are your core values?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we work at companies and they have their core values. They're on the walls. You recite them. Everybody has memorized them. But when it gets to the individuals, what are your core values? And does your team know what your core values are?
Mm-hmm.
Because that allows them to be able to communicate with you. It allows them to be able to know, what you stand for. And it allows you to be able to, express what you stand for. And that's when we get to those negotiables and those non-negotiable items, right?
Yeah.
So when you have the ability to, state what your personal core values are, it helps you make better decisions. And even though you might get off course, right? Because we get off course, but those core values are literally what keeps you what I call true north.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. There is a big connection between your personal values and the corporate values. And I think the greatest leaders, at least the greatest leaders that I've been around, are the ones that have figured out creative ways to bridge those two together into one cohesive path. And, and so that's always been interesting to me. That's something I've always driven with teams that I've led, is like talking about, okay, what do you want to do as a person? Where do you want to be in a year from now? Right. And, whether that was with us on our team and our company, it didn't really matter to me. But then the next statement to that, or the next question to that, is, how can I help you get there?
There you go.
Right. And so I think that kind of leads into our next kind of path here, which is building behaviors of a cohesive team. Because honestly, teams are only as effective as the leaders are in a lot of sense. So, what are your thoughts on the role that leadership plays in building a cohesive team?
Adam, when you look at all statistics today, and as a trainer yourself, right, we're always looking at statistics, and they can go either way. But you look at how many employees come to work every day and they're disengaged. My rule of thumb is, when your most passionate employee becomes silent, there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's something going on. And as a leader, it's up to you to find out what that is, hopefully before they get to that silent piece, right?
Yeah.
But again, right, that's that cognitive ability for you to pay attention to your team and know who they are, because you've had conversations with them. Oftentimes I find that emerging leaders, because they're so engulfed in the activities of the day, that they don't necessarily take the time to learn who their team members are, so that when somebody's off kill. So that when somebody is not operating under their usual, their usual manner. And so when you see someone that is not operating at the performance level that they typically do, you don't have the ability to kind of go, wow, something's different today. You just kind of take it and you give them your own ideologies of what's wrong. Okay, they're just fell off, or, they've gotten lazy, or, you give them all of these excuses, because you never had the ability, or you never took the time. Let's say that you never took the time to have a conversation. One of the things that I totally believe in is the inverted pyramid. So when you have your hierarchy pyramid, right, where you've got the CEO is at the top, and it goes, management all the way down to the employees being that last tier. That's when you get to the point where your employees are, they're not happy with their work. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel valued. And yet you continuously bring them, we got to do more. We have to pick up the slack from this division, or we have to pick up the slack from this region. But when you, again, right, using that perspective and balance aspect, and you take that pyramid and you flip it. So now your employees are the ones that are empowering. You're empowered. Your employees are the ones that are actually looking now at how can we collectively obtain the company's objectives, because now they're taking accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a mind shift, but it's also a shift that has to take place from the leader's role to the employee to be able to say, I value and appreciate your input.
Yeah.
You see, I shared this with you before. I'm a practitioner of Lean Six Sigma, as you are also in processes. And, one of the things that about processes is once you have the ability to train a person on how to identify where waste exists, rather it be a bottleneck, rather it be a constraint, rather it be, just something that is not necessary. And you have the ability to let them say, hey, we can do this better if, right? Because it takes you back to what you said initially. Leaders don't have to always have the answers. But when you go to the people that are literally the ones that are either on the phones or, as they say, on the shop floor, and you go there and you let them tell you, how things can be better. Then you have the ability to now start looking at what does it take to build this team cohesively. Yeah. And, those are like the first steps of building a cohesive team.
I think it's interesting you point out process, right? In that, in asking the question, what can we do to be better from a process standpoint? One of the things that I think is hugely important is, as a leader, is that we understand that we are disconnected from the process as a leader. Even though we're leading a team of people doing a process, we are disconnected from that. And so, like in my experiences, there's always three processes to every process, right? So there's the printed process, the documented, this is exactly how it should be done. There's the leader's perspective of that process and the shortcuts that they've maybe figured out along the way that they train everybody on. And then there's the actual process of being completed on the floor. And in engagements that I've been on, the goal was always to get those three to match as closely as you possibly could. But coming in the door, there was always three different processes. And that's really, to me, a big failure point when your leader, your documented process, and your actual process are all different. It's a breaking point. It also, I think, breaks the cohesiveness of what needs to get done and how it's getting done as well.
Absolutely. Because if the team is not sure, I've been in one of my experiences, I've been in a conversation where Department A didn't know what happened after they finished their assignment. It was like, so we do this. And then I said, okay, so then what happens? Well, it goes to the next group. I said, okay, well, what do they do? Well, I don't know. So there's the opportunity for cross-functional, right? When you have the ability to let the people know what happens before them and what happens after them.
Yep.
So therefore they see how important what they do is. So when they start looking at shortcuts, right? There's that what's the terminology? I think it's a normalization of the deviance.
Yep.
Where after a while, you start taking these shortcuts and that becomes the normal. To your point, right? When it's not the documented process, but it becomes the actual process, which shouldn't even be the process, but it's been okay because that's just the way we do it.
I love that's just the way we do it. Well, show me how you got there. Well, that was the person that trained me how to do it.
There you go. And then that person is gone off. They've left the building. They're on to something else. And nobody knows why they did that. Right. Yep. It's like that old story about, the parent that had the pot roast and they cut half of it off, put it into the pan. And then that generation did it. And the next one did it. And they said, well, why do we do this? And they're like, well, I don't know. Grandma used to do it. So somebody called grandma and she said, well, it's because I never had a pot big enough for the full pot roast. That was the logic, but nobody asked the question. And one of the things that I love about process improvements is, is the asking of the questions, right? All in asking the right questions. Why?
Yep.
Why is this happening? Why is that? And be okay with challenging, the status quo. And so I think for leaders, when you're looking at cohesive teams, it's, empowering, it's showing them how they can make improvements and being okay with them having suggestions.
Yep.
Oftentimes people don't raise their hand or they don't suggest something because they're going to be shot down or because, they just don't feel as though their suggestion is going to be taken seriously. And so you have some people that I call are the backseat passenger that just kind of rides with whatever happens, even though in their mind they know that there's another way, but they never say anything because that's just not the culture.
Yeah, I want to take a step back because you mentioned about people coming to you, but I think leadership behavior dictates that in a huge sense. And the reason I say that is because as a leader, if all you're ever doing is shutting down people's ideas, not giving them a why, not giving them can you go look at it from this perspective, not giving them effective feedback on why maybe that idea might not work now, you start to you'll start to see that shut down, and it'll happen kind of pretty quickly in my experience. Where I've always been on the premise of, let's have a conversation about it. And if it's not a good idea right now, send me an email with your idea and we can look at that down the road. Right. And I use that as an opportunity to coach during one-on-ones, during monthly one-on-ones, things like that. As an opportunity to revisit that stuff. And when you revisit, in my experience, then it becomes, they see that you value their opinions as opposed to, well, all he does is just shut me down constantly. And I never know which end is up.
Absolutely. And then, there's the other side of that too, Adam, that as an employee, right, if you have input, if you have something that you think could improve the company's standings, the bottom line, the objectives, whatever that is, that it has to be based on data and facts, right? It can't be emotional where it's like, well, I don't know, it's just not working, because then people don't listen to you because, you become now that emotional person. But if you base it on data and facts, that's something that your leader can now take to their leaders and say, listen, this is what we found. And this is why we think this improvement would be, more beneficial than what we're doing now. So you're literally now helping your leader to be able to plead your case because you're giving them that pertinent information to be able to do that with. And then, to be able to speak the language. As a leader, it's important that you help your team be able to speak the language so that they feel comfortable talking to, the next manager or the regional director that's walking through, or, that senior leader that's asking questions and no one's answering because they don't know how to have the conversation. So it's truly a coaching opportunity. And I think for emerging leaders, as you look at the different components that go in with it, it's literally gauging yourself so that you don't get overwhelmed, so that you don't get frustrated, so that you don't feel like you're giving up or you're giving in. Because we know for a fact, right, that every day about more than 15% of a leader's time is going to be spent on conflict. Right? You're going to be spent on conflict, on trying to get through the minutia, on, trying to figure out why, Billy and Patty can't communicate, and they're working on a project together. And, so a lot of your time is going to be spent in that area. So it behooves you to be able to get your people to where they can speak the language so that you can better help them. and you can better serve them. And, to your point earlier, my role for a leader has always been, I work for you. You guys, my job is to knock out all of the obstacles. My job is to, get through all of the minutia, get through all of the weeds so that you can perform. And if I do that effectively, then you guys get the accolades. You guys get, all of the kudos. You guys get the increases, the bonuses, the raises, all of that you get. But I just want to help you get there. And it's not about me. I don't really care if they say my name or not. I want you guys to get the credit, because that's typically where it lies.
Yeah, no, I think that's hugely important. And you're right. Yeah, as leaders, we are there to take down barriers, right? That's our fight. And so I think one of the biggest things that comes from taking down barriers is how we build trust, because trust is really, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that drives a barrier between a leader and a team. What are your thoughts on that?
That is huge. Trust goes along with transparency, right? Being transparent. I was reading something earlier, and it said it was about communication, and that's a huge piece of trust too. And it says leaders are to communicate 3 times as much in bad times versus in good times, right? So when things are well, you're supposed to communicate, but when things are not well, you have to communicate 3 times as much, just to, let people know that, okay, I know exactly what's going on. I hear you guys, and this is what I know, right? There's nothing like a leader that has information that they're not revealing to their team, and then their team gets blindsided.
Yeah.
So, that trust factor is it's so huge, because then, you find out things about the team that you might not know any other way other than them being able to come to you. And oftentimes we say we have an open door policy, and I use the finger quotes, right? For an open door policy, which literally means get in, get out, make it quick. But when you literally have an open door policy, that means, listen, come to me before you go to the water fountain and start spreading all types of, half truths, false truths. Come to me, get the truth, and then go ahead and be the town crier, but be the town crier with the truth.
I love it. I want to take a step back, because I love breaking down the barrier of the open door policy, because it's like unlimited vacation. It's one of the biggest scams in corporate America that exists, right? You hear so many leaders say, "Oh, I have an open door policy." What that really means is, if you can fit in the 5 minutes between my 2:55 and my 3 o'clock, then we're good. Otherwise, don't come bother me, because I got 12 other meetings I have to get to today. And
exactly.
So, thank goodness technology has helped break down some of those barriers, because I can sit in a conference call and do some IMing back and forth with my team if I absolutely need to. But it's still a challenge. That open door policy is still a huge challenge. And so what is your advice for leaders to really build that open door policy to something that actually is truly an open door policy?
So here's what I share with individuals. When I got my first leadership role, my job was to go to campuses. So I was the VP of admissions, and my job was to go to various campuses and coach, train, and help the employees in our particular division. And so here's what would happen. I would get to the campus, I'd have my laptop, we'd have a conference call. So I'm in an office somewhere on a conference call. I've flown out of, from where I am to go to this location to be with my team. And yet I'm in an office on my laptop, on conference call, on on another call, on this call. And I'm looking and I'm like, I've been here like 5 hours. And I have not had an opportunity to sit with my team. And so so I shared this because, sometimes too, as an employee, you have to manage up. right? And so I shared this with my leader, and I said, this is not why I'm here. So how do we get around this? And he said, close your laptop. Just tell me that you can't get on the call right now. And sometimes you don't want to tell your senior leader, I don't have time for your call because I'm with my team. But when you're looking at the example, right, and leading by example. And so what I learned to do, and now I am a huge advocate for the open door policy, literally being, come in, I take my phone, I turn it off, I sit it in the desk somewhere, right, where my laptop is down, and we're having a conversation. Now, you can't come into the office for 45 minutes and just be talking, right? But,
Yep.
But things that are of pertinency, or, things that can actually allow us to help you, let's have that conversation. But I want to give you my undivided attention. And I want that to be, demonstrated through my body gestures, through my eye contact, through all of those soft skills, right? Through all of those things that allows you to know that I'm listening.
Yeah, I think that's huge. You mentioned body gestures, and one of the things, that I think breaks down a lot of barriers is if you can, in some way, shape, or form, get yourself out from behind your desk as a leader, right? Coming into my office and sitting on the other side of my desk, it's a super formal relationship. It feels like boss employee, not like two people trying to solve a problem. And so, even if I can just roll to the end of my desk and have them, sit at the end of my desk, lean in, appropriate body gesture to show them that you are 100% engaged. That is, in my opinion, super, super powerful in building trust with your team.
Absolutely. Because then, what you do is you're setting the groundwork for how you're going to interact with others, because people are watching, right? Everybody on the team is watching how you interact with other team members. And so when they see that, then they go, okay, well, this truly is, this truly is a person that I want to help get to the next level. This is a person that I want to help, obtain the company goals, the department goals. This is someone that I want to help because I see this person is literally in it for me. And that's important because, I'll tell you, there have been times where, when you oversee a division and you have multiple divisions, and this division might have come up short, and now, you have to add on to what you've already accomplished, and you go back to your team and you go, hey guys, you did a great job, but I need 10 more. That's the time when they're going to say, you know what, I got you, because you've built that trust.
Yep.
And you feel good going into a meeting, being able to say, I got this. My team is going to be fine. We got you covered. Because that you and your team have that type of a relationship where that they're going to do their best, and they know that you're going to do the best on their behalf.
Absolutely. That right there is what it's all about. That that you're going to do your best on their behalf, and they know that they're going to do their best on your behalf, and everybody comes out a winner at that point. That's mic drop.
We all get to the top of the mountain at the same time and go, hey.
Nothing else to say there. Mic drop. That is ultimately, as a leader, when you have won, it is when everybody has everybody else's back unconditionally.
Absolutely.
So let's use that as a launching pad into our final thoughts for today. So I always like to wrap up every episode with one thing that people can take away from our conversation over the last 30 minutes or so, that they can easily implement into something that they're doing every day.
So I'm going to take it just a step further, because I'm going to go off here and just go, okay, Adam, forgive me. But this is something that I remember that my leader taught me a very, very long time ago, and I have it posted so that I just truly do not forget. And it says this, it says, trust people long before they've earned your trust. Believe in them more than they believe in themselves. Know that they will disappoint you, but demand that you forgive them. That's what a leader is supposed to do. Those are my final thoughts. I think you went mute.
There we go. I absolutely love those final thoughts. Absolutely fantastic having you on the show. This is an area where I'm hugely passionate about myself as well. So it has been so much fun talking to you about emerging leaders and what they can do to really win in their businesses. Where can people find you?
So you can find me everywhere. I'm everywhere. My website, though, is the primary location, which is www.rising-and-shining.com. And then also on LinkedIn at Sheryl Mays.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we get those in the show notes so people can find you there. I really appreciate your time today, and I appreciate your knowledge. It's definitely been some really, really good nuggets. For those of you in the audience, we appreciate you spending time with us, hanging out with us today as well. If not, we'll catch you on the replay. This episode will be airing live Thursday, November 19th at roughly 1 p.m.-ish on both YouTube and all the major podcast platforms. Being that next week is the Thanksgiving holiday, we will not have an episode, but we will be back the following week to talk about vulnerability in leadership. Absolutely going to be another amazing conversation. So look forward to us in a couple of weeks. We might sneak on and do a live in between, maybe not. So otherwise, if we don't talk to you, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will see you all in a few weeks.
Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, that wraps up yet another episode of the Winning Tactics Podcast. You can find Adam on both the LinkedIn and Facebook platforms. And to support the show and ensure the success of the podcast, would you kindly consider visiting Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus? We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, from the Winning Tactics Podcast, remember, culture is how your team behaves when no one is looking. Take good care, and thanks for listening.